Errol Mannix was 32 years old the spring he walked into the Lyman family John Deere dealership in Paxton and asked to see the 1992 4255. 2 weeks earlier, his banker had told him the tractor was too small. The salesman, a man named Holt Reichelderfer, who had been selling green iron in this part of Illinois since 1968, tried 3 different times that morning to walk Errol over to a 4455 instead. 15 more horsepower, better resale, same cab, $9,800 more on the sticker. Errol said no 3 times. He paid $52,800 cash and a check, drove the 4255 home that afternoon, and ran her on his 800-acre place outside Roberts for the next 33 years. The 1992 morning at the dealership had gone like this. Errol walked in at 8:14 a.m. Holt met him at the showroom door. Holt was 48, lean brown hair combed sideways, white shirt, green deer tie, brown leather belt. "Errol Mannix, from Roberts," Holt said. "That's me." "You called Tuesday about the 4255. "I did. Before we walk over to her, let me show you the 4455 first." "I'm not buying a 4455, Holt." "Just a look. Same cab, 15 more horsepower, $9,800 more on the sticker, but better resale value down the road." "Holt, I'm not buying a 4455. 5 minutes. Walk with me." Errol walked. Holt showed him the 4455 for 5 minutes. Errol said no a second time at 8:24 a.m. Holt walked him to the 4255. Errol climbed up in the cab. He asked 4 questions about the injector pump, the rear differential, the PTO clutch, and the price. Holt answered all 4. $52,800, Holt said. $52,800. Let me have the paperwork. "You don't want one more look at the 4455? "No, Holt. The 4255. "The 4255, Holt said. "If this kind of story matters to you, the kind where the numbers tell the truth and the work speaks for itself, we'd be honored if you subscribed." Earl Braddock came to know Errol slowly, the way most farmers in Ford and Iroquois counties came to know each other, across years of Farm Bureau meetings, drainage district meetings, the occasional auction. By the spring of 2025, Errol was 65, and his son Zach was running the day-to-day. The 4255 was still in Errol's machine shed. The hour meter read 16,840. Earl drove out to the Mannix place on a clear morning in May, the first warm Saturday of the year. Zach met him in the gravel drive. Errol came down from the porch a minute later with 2 cups of coffee. The May morning was already 64 degrees by 8 a.m. The cottonwoods on the north fence line had unfolded their first green. Earl had not been on the Mannix place since 2019. "It's been 6 years, Errol," Earl said. 6 years. "You look the same. I'm 3 things older. I'm 3 things slower. I'm the same." "Marnie still keeps the books?" "Marnie still keeps the books. She'll be at the kitchen table until the sun goes down." Zach took over. "Zach took over in 2023, Errol said. "He runs the operation. I run the maintenance schedule. The 4255 is my responsibility." "Yours alone." "Mine alone. Until the day I can't reach the dipstick." "Errol, you came to look at the 4255. "I came to look at the 4255. "If you're still here, subscribe. We don't rush these stories because the people in them didn't rush the work. The story everyone in Roberts knew but nobody told straight was this. In March of 1992, Errol Mannix had walked into Farmers State Bank to talk to a loan officer named Bernard Kell about financing a tractor. Bernard was 44 then, 10 years into the loan officer chair, the kind of bank man who put on a wool tie every weekday and read the obituaries before he read the loan applications. Errol wanted the 4255. Bernard wanted Errol to want a used 4040. "You're 32 years old, Mr. Mannix," Bernard had said. In the meeting, Errol still remembered word for word. "You have 800 acres. You don't need 130 horsepower. You need a clean used 4040 and the discipline to wait 2 years before you upgrade. The 4255 is the biggest mistake I have seen a young farmer make in this county in my career." "I'll take that under advisement, Bernard." "You'll take it as a no on the loan." "You'd refuse the loan?" Bernard had paused. "I'd refuse to recommend it." "Recommend or not, Bernard, the bank doesn't refuse a 22% down note from a man with no other debt and 320 acres in his own name. The bank doesn't refuse it. I write it under protest." "Write it under protest, Bernard. I'll sign anyway." Bernard wrote the note that afternoon. He wrote it with a memorandum on the file that read, in his own hand, "Borrower advised twice and refused. Loan written against my recommendation. Buying tractor too large for present operation and too small for future operation. Biggest mistake I have seen a young farmer make in this county in my career." Errol picked up the file copy of that memorandum from the bank in 2014, the year Bernard retired. He kept it in a brown manila envelope in his hutch drawer. He showed it to Earl that morning in May 2025, the way a man shows a prize bull's blue ribbon. The paper was yellowed. The handwriting was unmistakable. "Bernard never apologized," Errol said. "He never had to," Earl said. "He had to. He just didn't." "What was the biggest mistake about in his head?" "He thought the 4255 was the wrong size. Too small for what an 800-acre farm would grow into. Too big for what 800 acres needed in 1992. What did 800 acres grow into?" 820 acres, Errol said. "I bought 20 more from Frida Holcomb in 2003. That's all the growing this farm has done." "And the 4255 was right-sized." "The 4255 was exactly right-sized for 33 years." Errol led Earl out to the machine shed. The 4255 sat in her stall, faded factory green. The original equipment Goodyear rear tires worn smooth and run on extensions at the rim, ceiling he had paid Virgil Kemp to set in 2009. The hour meter read 16,840. The 466 cubic inch turbocharged inline six had never been pulled out of the chassis. The injector pump was original. The starter, the alternator, and the air conditioning compressor had been rebuilt twice each. The hood paint was faded. The cab glass was scratched. Everything else looked exactly like a tractor that had run honestly for 33 years. $52,800 in 1992 dollars, Earl said. In 2025 dollars, somewhere north of $116,000. Comes out to $3,500 a year of tractor. Comes out to $3,500 a year of tractor over 33 years, Errol said. Plus an average of $1,200 a year in fluids and parts, plus $640 a year in fuel above what a smaller tractor would have used. That's $5,340 a year all in. That's $5,340 a year all in for 33 years of every fall harvest, every spring planting, every summer custom hay job for the neighbors. And the 4040 Bernard wanted you to buy would have cost $14,200 used, Errol said. Would have lasted maybe 10 years. Would have been replaced twice in the time the 4255 has run. Would have cost over the same span, counting 2 replacements, fuel, service, roughly $89,000 against my $176,000, $200 on the 4255. On paper, it sounds like Bernard was right. On paper. But Bernard didn't count the work the 4255 could do that the 4040 couldn't. The custom hay jobs. The custom hay jobs. The 4255 ran a 9-foot mower conditioner, a hay rake, and a New Holland round baler clean through the long summer days. Took on neighbors' hay work I couldn't have touched with a 4040. Cleared $14,200 a summer in custom revenue every year from 1995 to 2018. That's 23 years of custom work. $326,600 of revenue I'd have left on the ground if Bernard had picked the tractor, plus $176,200 saved on Bernard's 2 replacements, plus $176,200 saved on Bernard's 2 replacements, Errol said. Net, the 4255 was $502,800 more profitable than the 4040 would have been. $500,000, Errol said. $500,000. How did Bernard die? Quietly, Errol said. In 2018. He never asked me how the 4255 was doing. He never asked. He never asked. Bernard had asked once, actually, in April of 2014, the day before his retirement. Bernard called Errol from his office at the bank. Errol drove in to pick up the original 1992 memorandum from the loan file. Bernard sat across from him for 10 minutes. Bernard's office was clean. Bernard's wool tie was straight. Bernard's coffee cup was empty. "Errol, I owe you a question," Bernard said. "Ask." "How was the 4255 running?" "She's running fine, Bernard." "Hour meter?" 11,840 hours. 22 years. 22 years. I owe you a different question, too, but I'm not going to ask it. "What's the question, Bernard?" Errol asked. "Whether I should take the 1992 memorandum off the file." "Don't take it off, Bernard. Leave it where it is." "Why?" Bernard asked. "Because if you take it off, the next young farmer who walks in here won't see it. He'll need to know what a banker thought in 1992 about a 4255 on 800 acres. He'll need to know what was wrong with that thinking." "Errol, leave it on, Bernard." "All right." Bernard left the memorandum on the file. Errol asked for a copy. Bernard handed him the photocopy that had hung on the inside of his loan file folder for 22 years. Errol drove home with it. Marnie Mannix came out to the shed a little after that with a tray of 3 coffee mugs. She was 62, silver hair in a low bun, kind brown eyes, wire-rimmed glasses, a gentle smile. She had married Errol in 1989. She had kept the farm books on the kitchen table for 36 years. "Earl Braddock," Marnie said, "has he shown you the bank memorandum yet?" He has. Does it still read the same to you the third time? Marnie asked Errol. It still reads the same. Errol nearly didn't buy her, you know, Marnie said. Nearly didn't? Earl asked. He came home from the bank that afternoon and sat at this same kitchen table for 2 hours without saying a word. Bernard's words got into his head. Biggest mistake. Biggest mistake. He almost backed out. I told him a banker doesn't know what a tractor is for. A banker knows what a loan is for. 2 different jobs. What did Errol say? He said I was right. He went to the dealership the next morning. And Holt tried to upsell him. Holt tried to upsell him 3 times in one morning. Errol said no 3 times. By the third no, Holt knew he was selling the 4255 or selling nothing. He sold the 4255 for $52,800. Errol, Marnie said, show Earl Bernard's letter from 2003. Errol walked back to the house and brought out a second envelope. Inside was a single typed letter on Farmers State Bank letterhead, dated October 14th, 2003. From Bernard Kell, Vice President. Subject line: Mannix Farm Operating Loan, 2003 renewal. Earl read the letter standing in the gravel drive. Bernard had approved Errol's 2003 operating loan at favorable terms, citing, and these were Bernard's exact words, exemplary equipment maintenance and an unusually conservative debt posture for a 43-year-old farmer in this region. Bernard wrote that 11 years after he wrote the memorandum about the biggest mistake, Earl said. Bernard wrote that 11 years after, Errol said. He still didn't take the original memorandum back. No, he just stopped using it. He just stopped using it. Bernard was a hard man, Errol. Bernard was a hard man. He was also honest. The 2 things go together more often than people think. Zach Mannix walked over from the equipment yard around 11. He was 35. Dark blonde hair under a green John Deere cap, blue-gray eyes, tan Carhartt jacket. He had been running the day-to-day on the Mannix farm since 2023, while his father stepped back to part-time work. Earl, Zach said. Zach, you're running the 4255? Every season. She'll be my main tractor for another 15 years if Dad's math holds. How does it run? She runs the same as she did when I learned to drive on her at 14, Zach said. Same cab, same gauges, same throttle response. The PowerTech 6.6 in your 8R410 is a different engine. It's got 70 more horsepower than the 4255, sure, but the 4255 6-cylinder pulls cleaner under load than I expected. Fuel per acre comes out to 1.34 gallons on the 14-foot disc. Your 8R does 0.92. The 8R wins per acre. The 4255 wins per dollar of total ownership over 33 years. Per dollar of total ownership. Per dollar of total ownership. Will you keep her? I'll keep her until she quits. Earl, I'm not sentimental about iron the way Dad is. I'm sentimental about the math. The math says keep her. Your father is sentimental? My father saved every receipt from the 4255 for 33 years, Zach said. He alphabetized them by year and category. The Hutch drawer is its own filing system. That's sentimental, Earl. He'd call it record-keeping. It's both. Which records have you read? All of them. I started reading them when I was 16. My senior project at Roberts High was a 47-page case study on the 4255 purchase versus the 4040 alternative. My ag economics teacher gave me an A. The $4,255 paid for the Ag Economics degree at U of I that came after. $52,800 in 1992 paid for a 4-year ag degree. $52,800 in 1992 plus 23 years of custom hay revenue paid for a 4-year ag degree, 2 pickup trucks, the air conditioner in the farmhouse, and Mom's 6-month sabbatical to Oregon in 2008. The $4,255 paid for the family, Earl? Errol smiled at that. He did not say anything. The story of Bernard Kell's 1992 memorandum had spread around Roberts and Paxton over the years in the way these stories spread, in pieces, partially, with the punchline often coming a decade later than the setup. By the time Bernard retired in 2014, the running joke at the Roberts Farm Bureau was that Mannix's biggest mistake had paid for 2 of Errol's pickup trucks, 1 new air conditioner for the farmhouse, and Marnie's 6-month sabbatical to visit her sister in Oregon in 2008. Errol heard the joke for the first time at a Farm Bureau meeting in November 2014. Errol Mannix, a 70-year-old farmer named Conrad Olafson, said, across the coffee urn that night, "How's that biggest mistake in the county tractor running?" "She runs," Errol said. "She runs the same way she's run for 22 years. 22 years, Conrad said. "I'd like to make Bernard's biggest mistake, too, when my 4040 wears out. Bernard would write you a memorandum about it." "I'd frame the memorandum, Errol." Errol smiled. He did not say anything else that night. Bernard never came to a Farm Bureau meeting after he retired. Bernard died in his sleep in November of 2018 at age 70. Errol attended the funeral. He sat in the back row. He shook hands with Bernard's widow Eileen at the wake. He did not bring up the 4255. "What did you say to Eileen?" Earl asked Errol that morning in May 2025. "I told her Bernard had been a fair banker to me," which was true. The first half of true. "The half worth saying at a funeral," Errol said. Holt Reichelderfer, the dealership salesman who had tried to upsell Errol from the 4255 to the 4455 in 1992, retired from the Lyman family Paxton dealership in 2009. He sent Errol a handwritten note in the spring of that year, on the back of a sales card from his last day at the desk. The note read, "Errol, you were right about the 4255. I owe you a beer. The first one's on me when you stop in. Holt." Errol kept the note in the same hutched drawer with Bernard's 1992 memorandum and Bernard's 2003 letter. 3 pieces of paper, 3 different opinions of the same purchase, 3 different decades of vindication. Holt Reichelderfer had moved to Florida in 2011. Errol never bought him that beer. They exchanged Christmas cards every year until Holt passed in 2022. Dale Voss came by the Braddock farmstead the Saturday after Earl's visit to the Mannix place. He leaned on the open driver's door of his white GMC Yukon. Ruddy face, wire-rimmed glasses, clean polo and khakis. "Earl, heard you were out at Errol Mannix's." "You heard. Errol show you Bernard Kell's letter?" "He did." Dale shook his head with a wide, smug, mocking smirk and a small, dismissive laugh. "Errol got lucky with that 4255. The 1990s 4255 was a good engine year, I'll grant him. He'd have looked like a fool if she'd thrown a rod in 1998. "She didn't throw a rod in 1998, Dale." "She could have. Could have," Earl said. But Errol didn't pick the 4255 because she might not throw a rod. He picked her because she was the right size for his ground and his work. The not throwing a rod was on Errol. He changed the oil every 100 hours for 33 years. Anyone could have done that. Anyone could have. Most people don't. That's the difference. You make it sound so simple, Earl. It is simple, Dale. People just don't like that it's simple. Dale climbed back into his Yukon and drove off without another word. He did not bring up the Mannix 4255 at the next Farm Bureau meeting. Ruth asked Earl over dinner that evening what he had taken away from the Mannix visit. $500,000, Earl said. In savings? In the difference between picking the right tool and picking the safe tool. Bernard wanted Errol to pick the safe tool. Errol picked the right tool. $500,000 in net difference over 33 years. That's a story worth keeping. That's a story worth keeping. Are you going to write it down? I don't write things down, Ruth. You write things down. I'll put it in the ledger tonight. What page? The same page where I keep Walter's 1978 receipt and Roy's 1962 receipt. Add Errol's 1992 receipt to the family page. He's not family, but the lesson is. The lesson is family. The lesson is family. Ruth, what would Walter have said about Bernard's memorandum? Earl asked. Walter would have framed it on the kitchen wall. Walter would have. Walter would have hung it across from his own 1978 sale receipt and pointed at it every time anybody asked him about a tractor purchase. Why? Because Walter understood the difference between a banker's memorandum and a farmer's decision, Ruth said. The banker's job is to write the memorandum. The farmer's job is to ignore it when he knows the math better than the banker does. Errol knew the math. Errol knew the math, and he had Marnie next to him at the kitchen table to keep the math honest. That's the part Bernard never had. Earl visited the Mannix place once more that summer, in late August 2025, the day Zach pulled the 4255 out for fall harvest prep. The hour meter clicked over to 17,000 that afternoon. Errol stood at the edge of the equipment yard and watched. He did not say anything. He did not need to. The 4255 ran the entire 2025 fall harvest, pulling a 32-foot disc on the Mannix ground. She put 142 hours on the meter in 8 weeks. 0 unscheduled service. 0 downtime. The PowerTech 6.6. Wait, Errol's tractor wasn't a PowerTech. The 6.6-liter turbocharged inline 6. In the 4255 was the older 6076T. Same family, different generation, cleaner running than Bernard ever predicted, quieter than Holt ever guessed. By Christmas 2025, Errol Mannix had run the 1992 John Deere 4255 for exactly 33 years and 9 months. The total cost of ownership across that span, purchase, fuel, fluids, parts, labor, came out to roughly $176,200. The total custom hay revenue she had earned over the same span came out to roughly $326,600. Net positive, $150,400. Bernard Kell's biggest mistake in the county had paid the family $150,400 above the cost of ownership, in addition to handling every spring and every fall on 820 acres without missing a season. The 1992 John Deere 4255 sits in the machine shed of the Mannix farmstead outside Roberts, Illinois. Faded green paint, original chassis, original engine, 17,142 hours on the meter. Errol's $52,800 cash and check from March 1992 sits in the family hutch drawer, alongside Bernard Kell's biggest mistake memorandum, Bernard's 2003 favorable renewal letter, and Holt Reichelderfer's 2009 handwritten note. 4 pieces of paper from one tractor purchase, 3 different men, one steady answer across 33 years of the work itself. Zach Mannix is 35. The 4255 has another 15 years in her by his math. Earl Braddock thinks the math holds.